When you first started training, what were some of the mistakes that you look back on now and like that you wouldn't have necessarily known to fix, but that that still stick out to you?
I think it was more of how I was training for what I was trying to accomplish. So I think a lot, like when I was really young, I was doing a lot of bodybuilding training thinking it was going to help my baseball. It did help my baseball to an extent. I mean, naturally, you have more muscle, you have more body armor, you're stronger. But I think there were some things I was doing that was, probably draining my energy levels, and it was forcing me to move a little bit slower on the field than I needed to. At the time, I thought I was playing great and doing well. But now looking back on it, you're like, wow, like I was training, 8s or 10s or going as heavy as possible and going to failure and training a muscle group a week when like, wow, why was I doing that on the day of a game? It doesn't make any sense. So I think it was more that stuff. I think the initial lifts the lifts that I was doing, they're all great lifts. I still do them. The bench, the squat, the deadlift, the military press. I got way more into a kettlebell later on. I remember I didn't want to train arms when I was 17 because I thought it was going to affect my arm speed. So I wasn't even training arms. And I think that's BS also.
But would it just be how you trained your arms?
Yeah. I think a little bit of arm. I mean, people talk about arm training as not being a functional, like all these functional purists. Well, arms, training arms, it's not functional training. I sat with Dr. Andrew Ospina. He goes, well, tell that to a mom the next time that she pulls her baby out of her crib. Like, you got to have strong arms. So, like, I think almost everything can be functional to an extent. I mean, there is going to be some carryover of strength. If you're doing a bench press and your back stabilized, like, fine, is it the best thing for an athlete to be doing? I argue it is, but is it going to completely ruin the athlete? I think it can ruin the athlete if you approach the athlete with the wrong amount of volume and the wrong what's the word I'm looking for? Stimulus. If you're beating the living crap out of them, yes. With athletes, I like to take a minimalistic approach. How little can you give them to accomplish their goal? Wow, that was perfect timing.
Do you know when to use stimuli?
Stimuli is in like me talking?
No, like use stimulus. Do you know when to use stimuli?
No, I don't.
Me neither.
That's interesting. Should I use the word stimuli? That's what
Probably
I was
not. I don't know.
What would you have changed? I'm curious to hear what you would have changed.
I had no guidance at all. So when I went to, I just, again, there was no internet. So I had magazines. So I would just follow people. And I would just follow, and a lot of times I follow the wrong people. And it wasn't like I followed them like, hey, pal, like I would literally just follow. I would see what they were doing. And so there was I had no technique. A lot of times I would just do the same body parts over and over. So I would just do, arms or, bench press. I didn't squat at all. Like at first when I was 16, it took me like a long time to really get into that because I just it was intimidating. I didn't know how to do it properly. So really I would have been more aggressive in asking for help.
Right.
Overall. And when I did start squatting, my form was horrendous. It really everything was just so bad. My back was fucked up. I was too heavy. My knees would cave in. So everything was bad. I would go too heavy on a bench press. So it's like, if the bar wasn't like coming, if it wasn't shaking and coming down, nothing was going well. So ultimately I would check my ego at the door. I would start lighter. I would not care at all what people thought, or they probably weren't even paying attention to me at all. In my head,
right.
It's like they were all looking at me and laughing, but ultimately it didn't matter.
Right.
And when I started to train more for sports and not give a shit what they thought, not only did I find more enjoyment out of it, but things started to click.
Yeah.
I started to see like, wow, like, you know what? Why am I squatting with my feet like so close together? Like, why don't I actually why don't I step out a little bit? What feels better? Like, why are my toes?
You started getting in tune with your body.
Yeah, and I did start to ask people more questions, and I started to look up how things should be done or how things were suggested to be done, and again, it wasn't that it always worked for me, but seeing how whether it was Arnold Schwarzenegger or whether it was somebody else that was a bodybuilder or even an athlete, how they trained, it was helpful to at least give me get me started.
Right. So. Awesome.